The move that was made from Shireel through those fast corners at the end of the lap through turn 12, that was a daring move, a really good move. But even then, Furasato was able to ride around the outside through the long right-hander at turn 15. Very impressive to have that sort of confidence in yourself.
Yes, clearly riding very high on confidence at the moment, and every reason for that, leading the Asia Talent Cup by a 46-point margin with only 3 races remaining in 2021. We've had 2 heavily interrupted seasons in the Asia Talent Cup, 2020 that of course was curtailed, and 21 that we've lost the bulk of the middle of the season. This is Daniel Shireel, our pole sitter. 3 consecutive second places for him, less than a quarter of a second short of the winner though in all of them. By the end of lap 7 in race 1 yesterday, he was 6th, 2 seconds behind the leader, and yet almost on pure pace alone he was able to get back on his tail 6 laps later. Shireel has got plenty of pace.
Yeah, and I think there's a few other riders that have that pace as well. We saw Gunmaya make big progress during the course of the races. He said a few
today, and that's the 3rd time for him in 5 races, enough to move him a clear 3rd position in the championship as a result, and just a little bit outpaced in the closing laps, but he's been one of the few riders this season to have had a genuine go at Taiyo Furasato, the championship leader, and the man who is the man to beat, as it were, over the course of this race.
Yeah, certainly the rider with the target on his back. You can see Carter Thompson here down in the pits as well, and Carter's had a pretty solid season. He's been top 5 in 4 of the races so far this year, 7th in the other race, and he finished 4th yesterday, so he's chasing his first ATC podium. He's going to start from the middle of the front row of the grid. This is a good opportunity for him.
Yes, Carter Thompson from the Australian capital of Canberra, who as a result of that 4th place in race 1 moved up to 4th in the championship standings, and as I said previously, the top 4 all still mathematical contenders, but Carter Thompson 66 points in the Asia Talent Cup, but he starts P10 here, and every reason to suspect that he might be able to pull that off.
Yeah, obviously that crash yesterday with Aditima, and it was unfortunate for him, but he was able...
Too much time from pit lane opening to get straight round towards the start line.
Yeah, they're pretty eager to get out there, get to the grid, and then do their sighting lap and then get straight into action. 12 laps for the ATC, so it is a bit of a sprint down 4 laps. Riders at the front of the field that have that bit of experience, but some of those riders a little bit further back at a brand new track like we have here in Mandalika as well, a track where we saw a lot of incidents yet
onwards, so they're trying to sort of narrow the range of ages, because Daniel Shireel at the other end of the scale, 18 years of age, also competing out there with a 12-year-old.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things that's going to change over the next few years. Obviously, with everything that's happened this year, really important to be able to make some of those changes, and that to the start of the race. But what we saw in yesterday's running, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens now today, is on the run down in towards turn 1, we saw the number 15 of Furasato from the 2nd row of the grid get pinched on the run into turn 1. That's easily can be the case as well, so riders do need to be careful in that run into turn 1, 90-degree right-hander.
Reminder of the grid then for race 2, and it's a slightly different order to what we had for race 1 yesterday. It was a demolition derby at the first time of asking around this Mandalika International Circuit, and 2 riders unfortunately withdrawn through injury. Kanta Hamada fractured left forearm, and Hakim Danish a crash from 5th position. He's out with a double fracture to his right wrist. So we're 2 riders down, but that does mean that several riders promoted to be a little bit closer to the front, and a couple of riders to watch further down the order. Adrian Deo starting from P21 Asia Talent Cup, the Indonesian round. For the 2nd time of asking, we get underway. Fast start immediately from the number 21, the pole sitter Daniel Shireel has really made a break in the run down towards turn 1. They're practically 8 abreast further back in the pack. Furasato's made a good jump from the 2nd row of the grid. That's Ferdhouse as well, up into P3 I think as early as turn number 1. So a train of riders now from 2nd position back, but the key story is the first bend. Furasato making immediate progress.
Yeah, Ferdhouse with a good start as well. Looks like Hongo's up there in the leading positions as well. Carter Thompson
pulling away out in front. Then it's Daniel Shireel from Ferdhouse in 2nd position, the number 10. Then it's the number 15, the championship leader Furasato. Hongo, who completed the front row of the grid. Masaya Hongo, the 17-year-old from Japan, is directly behind them. A little bit of Tama, Fadilla, Shireel and Dandy rounding out your top 10.
Yeah, and Shireel at the front of the field. Daniel Shireel on that 21. He's opened up 8/10 of a second. On this lap, he's been able to stretch out another couple of tenths of a second. But we'll see if Furasato and Mie are able to close down that gap. You can see down in towards turn 10. That looked like it might have been Aditama trying to attack down into 10.
That was a big attack from Aditama as well. You can see the green helmet flashing through, running wide.
Or 5 machine to just drop behind Furasato, not try and attack at this stage. See see if Furusato is able to use his pace. He is the pole sitter for the remaining 2 races this weekend. He was fast in free practice yesterday. He is the fastest rider out here in Indonesia this weekend. You want to try and see if you're able to use him just to close that gap onto Sheril at the front of the field. They pulled back a 1/10 of a second last time around.
Mir, the fastest man of that second lap, a 1 minute 44.118 according to our timing screens. So just 7/10 of a second now covering the lead trio. There's over a second, the gap back now to
Mir are going to close up on Daniel Sheril already in the last couple of corners. We've seen them pull back another couple of 1/10 of a second. They are doing their best to get that gap down. It's down to 4/10 of a second.
Messiah Hongo coming through on the inside of Herjan Firdaus, and Hongo who crashed out pretty spectacularly actually at the final turn halfway through yesterday's race, his first retirement of the season, back up and running and inside the lead group once again. He was in the top 6 at the time of his crash yesterday. Certainly has been his best weekend. Front on lap 3, he led every lap over the line from there on in. He's got a 1/4 of a second buffer now over Gun Mir, and Daniel Sheril will be keen to take up the challenge at the front.
Yeah, I think yesterday was really impressive to see how cool a head he kept on that final lap. He lost the lead with half a lap to go, was still able to make the move at the penultimate corner, and in this race it looks like Furusato's trying to take advantage of that pace.
Together, Firdaus in 4th position all the way down to Sheril in 10th place, are covered by just a second, so very little to choose between them. I should emphasise that's Sheril I'm talking about down in 10th position, not to be confused with Daniel Sheril, who's that man at the back of this trio at the head of the field.
Yeah, I usually find it confusing enough in the IATC, but at the front of the field, not too confusing for Furusato. He's doing exactly what he did in yesterday's race. Keep him.
Yesterday was pretty action-packed, and it looks as though race 2 is going to follow that trend. First rider down in the gravel trap, and we're going to see exactly what happens. It's the number 25, that's Pratama, Veda Pratama, who has gone down, just chasing. It looked like he was pushing as hard as he can. He's a relative newcomer. He's the youngster that we were talking about earlier on, just 12 years of age. Finished 8th position in race 1 yesterday. He chased perhaps slightly offline, through on the inside. Complex and now in towards turn 10. Yesterday's action hotspot, but he wasn't close enough.
Yeah, how impressive is that from Furusato on the brakes there? We saw that Mia had gotten alongside him, but for Furusato, he made sure he was braking that little bit deeper, sweeps across the front of Mia's bike and holds on to that race.
Get through there, then it looks as though he's keen to get through elsewhere in towards turn 16, although we know that Furusato is good at defending against those moves in towards turn 16, don't we, from the last lap of race 1. Sheril looks like he's biding his time at this stage. We head towards half race distance.
Yeah, Sheril there at the back of the group on the 21 machine. We'll see if he's able to try and attack into turn 1, but as it is right now, Mia doing exactly what he did in yesterday's race, but it was around this time that we started to see him fade a little bit, and Sheril and Furusato really just start to open up a little bit of a gap.
Lap 7, last time around, all 3 of these leaders set 1 minute 44.7s. A 1/4 of a second covering them as they cross the line. It's a 4.5 second gap now to Firdaus, Herjan Firdaus on the number 10, who sits in 4th position with the entire pack behind him. Still 1.5 seconds covering 4th all the way down to 10th, and then a separate group from 11th position down. But we're quite rightly watching the lead trio, and this is Tayo Furusato, who might have started in 5th position but has spent the majority of this race in P1, right where he sits at the moment, under some pressure once again from Gun Mir. We'll see if he can come through this 7-8-9 complex where they're making it through now in towards turn 10, and if he jams it down the inside like he did a lap ago, and whether Furusato has got the answer again on the outside. It's Sheril this time trying to make the move. Mie comes in late, oh goodness me, with a bit of a wobble there as well, almost collected the back of Furusato. That could change the championship complexion very quickly, couldn't it?
Yeah, Furusato's brave to hold that outside line and sweep all the way across and hold on to that position. You can see in the second group, it is still Hongo leading the way, and then the number 10 of Firdaus. We've seen that Carter Thompson managed to get into the top 5 on this lap, but
straight on in towards the gravel trap, and that is a real shame for Fadila Aditama, the number 3, and that is going to be a 5th retirement out of 6 races in this 2021 campaign. I said on the grid that he'd been a little bit action and prone at times, and so it's proven in this race too.
Yeah, no luck yesterday in an instant at turn 10, and then this instant at turn 13, and high-speed crash for him, but good to see him back on his feet and just trying to get that belly pan cleaned out. We'll see if he tries to get back into the race. We did see that riders that crashed in yesterday's race were still able to remount and score some points. We'll see if he can do that. But like you said, Alex, he's at 4 retirements already this season, and then another crash in this race.
Well, we didn't get 15 finishers yesterday. We had 7 riders retiring from a 21 rider grid, so all 14 that finished scored, and that you can see why he's collected another rider before going straight on.
I think it might have been Dandy that he collected there on the number 11 machine, and just left with nowhere to go. A bit similar to what happened to him in yesterday's race as well.
Lap 8 of 12 then, and Sheril has left Mie.
Would still win the championship and get it all wrapped up today, and certainly for Furusato that has to be the target that he's got in his mind, just to make sure he's able to win the Asian Talent Cup this year.
0.3 of a second as they cross the line at the end of lap 8. Separate battle behind. It is still Herjan Feerdaus who has led that group for several of the laps around. Hongo oscillating backwards and forwards. He's dropped down to 6th position. That clash with Dandy and Adatama that we saw, that's left him with a little bit of a margin to find on Gun Mie, but Mie gets down the inside of Furusato, moves across his path in towards turn 10, and if that's what it takes to get it done, says Gun Mie, then that's exactly what I'll do. Furusato, with a good look over his shoulder, knows that Sheril is directly behind him, but with Furusato out in front, if he were to stay there...
on the run down in towards the last corner to see if he can try and make a move back into the race lead.
Yes, I got my words in a twist there. This is the live championship, and that'll explain it possibly better than I just did. Basically, I was saying that Furusato, if he finishes second behind Mie, who's also in contention, a similar number of points to Daniel Sheril, then we would still go into the third race of the weekend here this afternoon. 3 laps to go then. Furusato out in front, 3/10 covering your lead trio, as it has been for the majority of this race, to be perfectly honest. Furusato back in front, and Daniel Sheril, his closest points rival, stuck down in third. Gun Mie's been the more pugnacious of the two over the last lap or so.
I was getting a bit confused with my championship standings as well, so certainly for Furusato the easy target is win the race, win the championship, and he's doing exactly that once again. He's opened up another couple of tenths of a second, but we've seen in this sector of the track, this is where the number 5 of Gun Mie is very fast and able to bridge that gap. But we also know Daniel Sheril in yesterday's race had that edge in the closing stages. He needs to get through into second spot to see if he's able to take the fight to Furusato.
Furusato is your leader. Mie then in second position. We've seen most of the moves in the Asia Talent Cup this weekend, and also most of the crashes in towards turn number 10. They're 3 abreast this time around. For a
second time we've seen Gun Mie do that on Sheril as well, so we can clearly see Sheril is struggling into turn 15 to get that bike stopped. But maybe just a little bit of tactics from Sheril as well. It'll be interesting to see if he changes tack in the final couple of laps.
2 to go. Furusato has a 0.3 of a second advantage over Mie and Sheril. These two have got to be careful that they don't fight with one another. We know that Furusato
towing the run down in towards turn 10.
Championship situation is fairly straightforward with the 2 riders behind him. If either of them gets through on Furusato, the championship will go another race. But if Furusato stays out in front and takes what will be a 6th consecutive victory of this 2021 campaign, then he will have sewn up the Asia Talent Cup with top 3 in the championship, and they currently sit in the order that they are in the classification as well. Furusato, who leads it by 46 points over Daniel Sheril. Gun Mie 52 points down on Furusato, so would need to beat him to keep his personal hopes alive, and at the moment it's all about Furusato heading his way towards victory. 1 to go.
Yeah, really important for Furusato just to think about where he can defend on the run in towards turn 10. He has been stronger everywhere else around this track all the way through this weekend. He's going to force Sheril to go around the outside into turn 1. Furusato forced Sheril to go the long way around the outside down the start-finish straight in the run into turn 1. He's going to have to try and do something similar on the run into turn 10 as well. That's Sheril's best chance to make the move.
We saw Sheril was willing to make the move wherever he could. Yes, no, big moment there for Gun Mie, and he's gone out onto those big serrated curves on the outside line as well. So that rules him out of a fight between these top 2 because there's 0.6 of a second already between second and third positions, and Gun Mie has got it all wrong there on the final lap. He holds on for a podium position. Sheril to the outside line then. Turn 13 and comes through. Then Furusato recovers it coming through turn 14. It's a head-to-head on the final lap that will determine whether we go to another race in the Asia Talent Cup for 2021 or whether we have just settled the series standings. 1 final sector to go. It's Furusato, the leader, on the number 15. It's Daniel Sheril, the pretender, on the number 21. I don't think he's going to be close enough coming off the final turn. It's a drag race down to the line. Furusato holds on, and Tayo Furusato claims the 2021 Asia Talent Cup with 2 races to spare.
I actually thought Furusato might have gone too defensive there in the final sector, judged it to perfection. Really good race performance from him. Hongo takes 4th, Thompson's up inside the top 5 once again, as the rest of the field comes through to claim the points paying positions.
Yes, Thompson rounding out your top 5, Feardaus for Jita in isolated 7th position, Wakamatsu in 8th for Dilla, and Dandy rounding out your top 10. But it was all about the top 2 in the context of the championship. We had a very similar race to what we had yesterday. We had exactly the same outcome, a 6th win of the season for Tao Furusato.
Yeah, and if you want to see how on the limit Shireel was to try and make the moves to take the race lead, we saw through turns 6 and 7 he had a bit of a moment. We saw on the run into turns 12 and 13 he had another moment. That was the deciding factor. It meant that into turn 15 Furusato was able to take a normal line. He didn't have to defend the position. He did take a defensive line on the run through 15 into 16, and he was able then to exit the corner nice and clean and hold on to that race victory. He was able to take it by a 1/10 of a second, and just like we saw yesterday, able to lead pretty much the whole race here, nice and comfortable. 6 from 6 from Furusato.
And you get the impression that Daniel Shireel just felt that he had to throw everything at Furusato if he was going to have a hope of beating him and pushing this championship fight on. I think realistically, even if Daniel Shireel had got through to hit the front, Furusato would have been a matter of a few points away.
Done a really good job in Moto 2, but Furusato certainly a name to keep your eye on.
Yeah, it's always an opportunity for the Asia Talent Cup when they're rubbing shoulders with the Grand Prix and with the World Superbike paddocks. And Furusato is a name that we'll remember for the future, little doubt about that. 16 years of age from Japan, and he's taken the Asia Talent Cup, and in the best possible fashion as well, with 6 wins out of 6 so far. Brilliant performance. Really
impressive, and it's how cool a head he keeps as well. We saw in yesterday's race, we saw in today's race as well, the same story. Very impressive young rider, and we also saw that blinding pace from the start of the season in Qatar, where he was able to win both races by over 9 seconds.
4 second places in a row for Daniel Shireel. He's going to be getting fed up with this. It's all 4 of them that have been less than a 1/3 of a second between himself and Furusato. And he's got 2 more opportunities to at least try and take that first victory since his comeback.
Yeah, it has been a really impressive comeback. We talked about it after race 1 when he had a fractured leg in Sepang a few years ago. Almost had to have his leg amputated, so it shows just how impressive